Saturdays I trash your party. You hate Trump, Biden shot it. You tell every kid you see that you are gay. Science makes you mad, indictments make you glad. For 8 years now we've got 'em, is all you said. Biology is just too much, so the doctors cut off your nuts, and you think that you are a babe. You call me names and swear at me because you changed the way you be, and I don't want to live your fantasy. I know I'm right, you're fucking crazy. And tonight I'm gonna prove just how much you ain't too bright. You're kinda lazy. I know you're wrong, I know I'm right, you're fucking nuts. Alright, wait a minute, gotta start the show right. There we go. First, we have some administrative things to do. We have to send out our invitations to the loony left because, well, make sure that's good. Yep, there we go. NVR, there we go. Podcast, let's see, Instagram. That one is, there's that. I believe the next will be Facebook. Yep. Is that Gato dumbass, or is it, yeah, Gato Grant. Let's see, where's it? Oh, yeah, there it is. There we go. And let me see. Oh, one more Facebook. Beer. Who am I? Oh yeah, here we go. And then I gotta go, yeah. Let me see. Gotta do John Campbell. And who's the other dumbass? John Campbell. We got John Campbell. He's good. We got him. And we got the Klaus douche nozzle here. There we go. Now we can get back to, I've done my administrative shit. I've invited them over, so it's on them now. Let's see, F4. How'd you like the new entrance? I worked on it myself. I was walking the dog, and of course, there's old Cheese Doodle there who was still, what's up, son? Love you, Sandriana. Anyway, I was walking the dog, and the frickin' song come to me. So I have a few things scheduled tonight besides drinking beer. First, something from the 70s. I was born in 1968, so I had to live through the 70s. And, and I thought like Grumpy Farmer would know what we're talking about. He's he was born close to the time I was, so yeah, he'll remember some of this shit. Like standing up in the back of the car. There was no such thing as car seats. Lawn darts. What else? Oh, they mentioned a bunch of stuff. Secondhand smoke. So I want to, play this for you because it's like imagine like the big Buicks. Remember the old station wagons where they had the seat in the back where you faced backwards? How many people threw up driving like that? But anyway, watch this video and reminisce.
Oh, the 70s. What a decade to be alive in. This was a time when cars, music, clothes, and everything was different. If you were alive back then you got to experience life as it really was. We were fortunate that we did most of our idiotic things long before the internet. There was never any fear of someone recording us and then seconds later uploading it to share with the world. Technology in the 70s was relatively simple. Many kids had a close-and-play record player along with some 45 records to play. Polaroid cameras were another cool item to have.
That's how old I am.
You did not have to wait 2 weeks to see your photos. The photograph magically appeared after 60 seconds of anticipation. And remember the Panasonic AM/FM wrist radio? It made listening to music fashionable. If you wanted to speak to someone, you either picked up the rotary phone and gave them a call, or you went over to their house. You certainly didn't have Facebook or Instagram to hide behind. If the person you wanted to speak with was away, then you wrote them a letter. Back then, it was very common to have a pen pal or two. A 1970s summer weekend might consist of a family drive to your local ice cream shop.
There's that station wagon.
Treat. On the way, you would listen to the radio, or if you were really lucky, your dad had an 8-track player, which seemed to always have Elvis or Johnny Cash playing. No one ever argued over whose Spotify playlist would be heard. If it was a warm Sunday afternoon, then it was the perfect time for some family fun washing the car in the driveway. Cars were bigger back then, and they had a whole lot of chrome, so it really did involve the whole family. Minus Mom, that is. Toys in the 70s had an element of danger, and that was okay. Parents didn't sue the manufacturer, but it did teach you how to be careful and think about what you were doing. Especially with the possibility of burns from the Easy Bake Oven, Shrinky Dinks, or a wood-burning kit. Even lawn darts and clackers had the possibility of sending something sharp inside you. We had a lot of choices when it came to toys and board games. But most of the time, kids were playing outside. In fact, our parents wanted it that way. It was the only time when they could enjoy some peace and quiet or maybe get something done around the house. People didn't have cell phones or apps to track where their kids were, so it was okay if parents had no clue where their kids were. It was very common for kids to be gone all day and then come home when the street lights came on. Remember when the 10 o'clock news came on? They would give out a reminder to parents in case they forgot to check on their kids. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? When we played outside, we fearlessly climbed trees, jumped over fences, explored, and made secret hideouts in poorly constructed tree houses or out in the woods. It was all about getting out of the house and having fun. We never had play dates back in the 70s. We just went outside and played. Eventually, other kids from the neighborhood would join in on the fun. It could be anything from hide and seek, tag, hopscotch, jump rope, or playing catch. Of course, having a bike was very important as a kid. It meant a little more freedom and it could take you places further away. But what kid didn't love a little danger? We all enjoyed a good challenge from time to time and never backed down from it. How many trash cans or people could we jump over? I don't know, but let's find out. If you made it further than anyone else, it made quite an impression. If someone landed on the kid at the end, it made a good impression too. Just not the way that you expected. Someone was going to be a winner and someone was going to be a loser, and that was okay.
Oh no, no participation trophies?
We would experience these ups and downs in our neighborhood and in sports. At some point, we all knew someone in a cast, and parents were never judged for not protecting their kids. And again, no lawsuits if you got hurt on someone else's property either. Childproofing in those days really only meant moving the ashtray off of the coffee table. Everything else seemed fair game. If we were ever confused on how we felt, we just turned to the old trusty mood ring. Silly Putty was how we shared our favorite comics or memes. We learned how to entertain ourselves even if we just had some sticks, and we could make a game out of anything. Using our imagination was just part of the learning experience. When it was hot outside, there was nothing better than a refreshing garden hose. Of course, don't forget to let it run a while or the water was going to be too hot. But if we were really lucky, then we might have some Kool-Aid or Tang. If it was good enough for the astronauts, then it was certainly good enough for us. Sugar cereals such as Fruit Loops or Captain Crunch was a breakfast that we preferred. Well, unless you had some Pop-Tarts, I guess. You could grab that and head out the door to play with your friends. Cheese Whiz became the fun snack that you and your friends or siblings would see how much you could stuff into your mouth. Swanson TV dinners were an occasional treat so that your mom did not have to cook.
No microwaves, you had to cook them in the oven.
It was extra special when the TV trays came out. That meant that something was coming on television and no one wanted to miss it. Nutrition over the years has changed a lot. We weren't trying to eat unhealthy, but we did the best with what we had. The crazy thing was that people seemed to be thinner, and perhaps because they were outside and more active. We did not have kids with peanut allergies or strawberry allergies, so sandwiches made with these ingredients were very popular at school. No one ever seemed to be on gluten-free, dairy-free, GMO-free, fat-free, or sugar-free diets. Just pack whatever you wanted inside that metal lunchbox and call it good. Whatever was in there wasn't going to go bad in there for a few hours, and that was without ice packs like kids use today. Secondhand smoke in the 1970s was something that we all experienced whether someone smoked in your house or not. It was going to be everywhere else, and I do mean everywhere. As kids, we all had things that mimic adults and their addictions. We had bubble-blowing pipes, bubblegum cigars, candy cigarettes, Fun Dip, and even pixie sticks.
And common sense.
For us kids, it was really all about getting more sugar. And who didn't want the candy bracelets or necklace? That was great when you were playing outside with your friends. We did not worry about germs at all, and instead we just offered them a bite from it. Many of the grammar lessons we learned came from the animated Schoolhouse Rocks. Conjunction junction, what's your function? Encyclopedias were our Google for the time period. No one was looking up anything fast with those. We may not have had the internet, Facebook, or Netflix, but we did have the next best thing. The picture view masters could take us to far-off places that we had never seen and might not ever go. Our tablets weren't high-tech, but we did have hours of fun drawing endless images on the Etch-a-Sketch. After a hard day of playing outside, we would come in and relax a little in the tub with Mr. Bubbles. Television programming went off the air at night, and with no cell phones or computers, it was much easier to get a full night's sleep. It really is amazing to think about what all we did without helmets, seat belts, or cell phones. Heck, even our mothers were smoking and drinking while they were pregnant with us. Yet somehow many of us survived. Generally speaking, the younger generation seemed to suffer from more anxiety than we or our parents did. Now there are more weight issues, body issues, and various other health issues than we had ever experienced in the 70s. Much of this new kind of shaming or needing to have some issues seems to come from television or the internet. We were less exposed to all of that in the 1970s. Did you ever hear of a kid being diagnosed with ADD or ADHD? Perhaps we all just need to be outside more and enjoy each other's company in person without all the distractions. So are our kids better off today than we were? All I know is I wouldn't trade my childhood for all the likes on Facebook. Some things are irreplaceable, and the memories of the 70s will always be something I cherish. What do you remember most about the 1970s? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.
Let's see, that's, okay. What I remember from the 70s is no made-up pronouns. Common sense was more prevalent. Or maybe people were just as stupid, but thanks to there was no internet then, so they really couldn't go international like they do now. Anyway, I wanted to, because Grumpy Farmer the other day, I think it was, brought up something about global warming, and I've been looking for this. I can only get it in audio, but I've been looking for this audio for, I don't know, a few months now, because I'm still waiting for a loony leftist, like climate alarmist, to explain this shit, okay? Because he's not a nice guy. I get it that the loony left just piss you off because they're so fucking stupid. But anyway, I'm waiting for a loony leftist to come over to the podcast or anywhere and explain this guy's take on it away, because I do believe he has a point.
What are you guys going to do when our ocean level rises?
You're full of shit. Sit down. I'm going to answer you. Shut up and sit down. If the water on the planet is going to rise up 10 feet, that means the southern part of the United States is gone. England is gone. Most of Europe is gone. And I can go, most of Central America is gone. If it were really true, the banks wouldn't invest. The banks wouldn't finance. I'm jealous of the Vice President, Gore. I am jealous he came up with a scam before I did. Because the financial institutions, the banks of this world know it's not going to happen. Otherwise, you couldn't get a goddamn loan in London. You know those 30, 40-year mortgages? The world will be over by then. It's the greatest fraud that's been perpetrated on mankind this century.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Are you fucking getting it yet?
You got people like this around you. Country's full of them now. People walking around all day long, every minute of the day, worried about everything. Worried about the air, worried about the water, worried about the soil. Worried about insecticides, pesticides, food additives, carcinogens. Worried about radon gas, worried about asbestos. Worried about saving endangered species. Let me tell you about endangered species, all right? Saving endangered species is just one more arrogant attempt by humans to control nature. It's arrogant meddling. It's what got us in trouble in the first place.
It's sad when a comedian is
Doesn't
smarter
anybody
than our
understand that?
politicians.
Interfering with nature. Over 90%, way over 90% of all the species that have ever lived on this planet, are gone. Whoosh. They're extinct. We didn't kill them all. They just disappeared. That's what nature does. They disappear these days at the rate of 25 a day. And I mean regardless of our behavior. Irrespective of how we act on this planet, 25 species that were here today will be gone tomorrow. Let them go gracefully. Leave nature alone. Haven't we done enough? We're so self-important. So self-important. Everybody's going to save something now. Save the trees, save the bees, save the whales, save those snails. And the greatest arrogance of all, save the planet. What? Are these fucking people kidding me? Save the planet? We don't even know how to take care of ourselves yet. We haven't learned how to care for one another. We're going to save the fucking planet? I'm getting tired of that shit. Tired of that shit. tired. I'm tired of fucking Earth Day. I'm tired of these self-righteous environmentalists, these white bourgeois liberals who think the only thing wrong with this country is there aren't enough bicycle paths. People trying to make the world safe for their Volvos. Besides, environmentalists don't give a shit about the planet. They don't care about the planet. Not in the abstract, they don't. Not in the abstract, they don't. You know what they're interested in? A clean place to live. Their own habitat. They're worried that someday in the future they might be personally inconvenienced. Narrow, unenlightened self-interest doesn't impress me. Besides, there is nothing wrong with the planet. Nothing wrong with the planet. The planet is fine. The people are fucked. Difference. The planet is fine. Compared to the people, the planet is doing great. Been here 4.5 billion years. Did you ever think about the arithmetic? Planet has been here 4.5 billion years. We've been here, what, 100,000? Maybe
Makes you want to kind of punch
200,000?
Greta in the
And
face,
we've only
doesn't
been
it?
engaged in heavy industry for a little over 200 years. 200 years versus 4.5 billion. And we have the conceit to think that somehow we're a threat? That somehow we're going to put in jeopardy this beautiful little blue-green ball that's just a-floating around the sun? The planet has been through a lot worse than us. Been through all kinds of things worse than us. Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, the magnetic reversal of the poles, hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets and asteroids and meteors, worldwide floods, tidal waves, worldwide fires, erosion, cosmic rays, recurring ice ages, and we think some plastic
We've had 3
bags
fucking ice ages.
and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference? The planet isn't going anywhere. We are. We're going away. Pack your shit, folks. We're going away. And we won't leave much of a trace either. Thank God for that. Maybe a little styrofoam. Maybe. Little styrofoam. Planet will be here and we'll be long gone. Just another failed mutation. Just another closed-end biological mistake. An evolutionary cul-de-sac. The planet will shake us off like a bad case of fleas. A surface nuisance. You want to know how the planet's doing? Ask those people at Pompeii who are frozen into position from volcanic ash how the planet's doing. Want to know if the planet's all right? Ask those people in Mexico City or Armenia or 100 other places buried under thousands of tons of earthquake rubble if they feel like a threat to the planet this week. How about those people in Kilauea, Hawaii who build their homes right next to an active volcano and then wonder why they have lava in the living room? The planet will be here for a long, long, long time after we're gone, and it will heal itself, it will cleanse itself, because that's what it does. It's a self-correcting system. The air and the water will recover, the earth will be renewed, and if it's true that plastic is not degradable, well, the planet will simply incorporate plastic into a new paradigm, the earth plus plastic. The earth doesn't share our prejudice towards plastic. Plastic came out of the earth. The earth probably sees plastic as just another one of its children. Could be the only reason the earth allowed us to be spawned from it in the first place. It wanted plastic for itself. Didn't know how to make it. Needed us. Could be the answer to our age-old philosophical question, why are we here? Plastic. Assholes. So, the plastic is here, our job is done, we can be phased out now, and I think that's really started already, don't you? I mean, to be fair, the planet probably sees us as a mild threat, something to be dealt with, and I'm sure the planet will defend itself in the manner of a large organism, like a beehive or an ant colony can muster a defense. I'm sure the planet will think of something. What would you do if you were the planet trying to defend against this pesky, troublesome species? Let's see, what might... viruses. Viruses might be good. They seem vulnerable to viruses. And viruses are tricky, always mutating and forming new strains whenever a vaccine is developed. Perhaps this first virus could be one that compromises the immune system of these creatures, perhaps a human immunodeficiency virus, making them vulnerable to all sorts of other diseases and infections that might come along. And maybe it could be spread sexually, making them a little reluctant to engage in the act of reproduction. Well, that's a poetic note. And it's a start. And I can dream, can't I? See, I don't worry about the little things. Bees, trees, whales, snails. I think we're part of a greater wisdom than we will ever understand. A higher order. Call it what you want. Know what I call it? The big electron. The big electron. Whoa. 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 It doesn't punish. It doesn't reward. It doesn't judge at all. It just is. And so are we. For a little while. Thanks for being here with me for a little while tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now I always thought Rob Schneider, I think it's Schneider or Schneider was like a loony leftist from Hollywood, like all the other loony leftists from Hollywood. And then I heard this joke, and I was like, that's fine. And I honestly believe that some of the left now feel this way, especially in the Latino community, because, well,
my wife comes in. You vote for Donald Trump? 17 times you vote for him? Do you know your wife is a Mexicana? Your daughters are Mexicanas. Your family is from Mexico. You vote for him? Then you're racist too. I'll never look at you the same way again, ever. I swear to God, 4 years later, my wife's like, fuck, I can't believe it, but I'm voting for Trump. Holy shit, let me tell you. I don't know. I am not a person who menstruates. I'm a woman. I'm a mujer. Pinche bendejes.
now the next part of this little tonight's podcast is something that you may know. Well, let me give you a picture. This is Tom Ballard, right? The inspiration for the movie Sound of Freedom. Okay, a movie that the left seems to not like. Strange. Loony leftists don't like a movie about sex trafficking, because, well, they groom kids. So, oh, wait a minute. One of the we'll go to F8 because I prefer that you all get to see. Yeah, exactly. Well, they won't come over here either. I give them the platform. I do kind of make fun of them when I invite them over. But yeah, I invite them over. I'm probably more than they'll do for me. They'd never invite me to one of their like podcasts or a social media platform, anything like that. They'd never invite me over. But let me see, where are we? I got to go to Facebook. I invited some people over from Facebook. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? Maybe I could play it for you. Let me see, where is it? There should be a new one here. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not monetized, you dumbass. Okay, this is what he said.
And put a nickel in your pocket? Not a fucking chance.
Wait a minute now. Since I'm not monetized, and I think you know that. You're just scared. Think you know that. You just don't want to get laughed at. You just don't want to get laughed at. It's a good thing I can type really fast. You just don't want to get laughed at. I don't blame you. Knowing your limitations is a good thing. That's better. Knowing your limitations is a good thing.
Since I'm not monetized, and I think you know that, you just don't want to get laughed at. I don't blame you. Knowing your limitations is a good thing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tim Ballard Podcast, rolling into episode 4. So stick with us as we enter into this
I forgot
episode.
to turn
Now,
the
this is a
mic on,
special
sorry.
episode. I had the opportunity to interview a president of the United States, a former president, President Donald Trump.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm doing. Tom Ballard is the inspiration for the movie Sound of Freedom, which the loony left doesn't seem to like. Shocker, people grooming kids in public schools don't like a movie about child sex trafficking. By the way, you sick fucks, not you guys, but the loony left out there, or whoever, the United States is the largest consumer of child porn and child sex trafficking and blah, blah, blah through the border. We'll get to that because he talks about that too. He was a DHS agent, Department of Homeland Security. He worked on the border, quit his job to go help rescue trafficked children. They made a movie about it. The loony left doesn't like the movie. The loony left are the ones grooming kids in public schools. Later, he'll explain how they're helping these sex traffickers. But right now, this is how much they hate Donald Trump. They will keep kids in the trafficking and all that stuff because Donald Trump, they hate Donald Trump that much. Kids don't matter. So I'll let him explain it. He explains it better. And you know what? Fuck him. Literally, he says it in a nicer way, but fuck him.
Trump about human trafficking. He hosted a screening of Sound of Freedom, and then we talked afterwards. Now, I want to say a few things entering into this, because a lot of people said, I'm not going to even support you anymore, Tim, because you met with Donald Trump. I don't understand this attitude. I really don't. Now, I'm coming from a position.
It's called a mental illness. It's called TURD, Trump Unacceptance and Resistance Disorder, and nothing else matters. It is a mental disorder. It's a fucking cult.
Of trying to rescue children. Okay, and I will partner with anyone and everyone in the world. If you want to help me rescue kids, then I'm going to be on your team. And I learned this lesson about the people around Donald Trump when I was invited to brief him in the White House a few years ago. And I had an expertise, and still do, on the border. I spent 10 years as a special agent on the border, as an undercover operator on the southern border, so I understand very well how it works. And I understood during those 10 years that it's not political. The Clinton administration built more of the wall than any other administration. It was never partisan. We all understood that when you maintain the flow of people, you get to rescue people. And in particular, you get to rescue children. It's a very basic concept. It shouldn't take that long for people to understand. They pretend they don't understand it, I think, because they don't like that Donald Trump touched it, that Donald Trump made it a big deal. The bottom line is this, guys. Children are being trafficked into the United States, okay? And when they get into the United States, it's very scary because we're the number one country for consuming child exploitation material. So you don't want to be a lost child in this country. And the last hope they have, if they're being smuggled or trafficked through the southern border, is at that port of entry. The walls force the traffickers to take the kids there, where trained women and men in uniform can identify and rescue them. I've seen it. I've been part of that. And that's basically what I said to the president when asked about human trafficking on the southern border. I left the White House, and within hours, I got a phone call from our CFO at Operation Underground Railroad who said, Tim, we just lost over 1,000 recurring donors. These are people that knew we were rescuing kids. They didn't stop donating to us. They didn't stop becoming recurring donors because we stopped rescuing kids. They stopped becoming recurring donors because I met with Donald Trump. I don't even know that they even necessarily disagreed with what I said, because who would disagree with that? It's very basic. It's very obvious. If you care about kids and you put that first, you're going to agree with the basic concept of 2 + 2 = 4, how border walls and enforcement works to rescue children. I told my CFO that I wasn't going to respond to them because they were begging me to call them, call the donors, tell them what you told us, that you would say the same thing to any president, to any administration, the same thing, the same truth, because it's about rescuing kids. And I decided not to call any of them because they told me something very important, which was that they hate one person or one party more than they love rescuing children from a life of rape. That's pretty sick. That's pretty sad. And I don't even kind of want that energy near me. So that was my introduction to the divisiveness around one party or one person and just partisan politics in general. So with that, because some of you are probably tuning in for the first time to the Tim Ballard podcast because you want to watch this interview with Donald Trump, we're going to talk about the issues around.
If you want to go over and watch that interview, it's a good interview, and he has a good podcast, and he has a lot of good stories, and I would recommend it. I don't have the link to it right now. I just happened to stumble across this by accident, actually. And the Sound of Freedom isn't playing in Brazil, which a lot of kids are actually smuggled from Brazil to the United States. So anyway, go over to his podcast, but he's got the loony left cult nailed. So back to the audio.
Children, because that's what I want to talk to him about. I would love to interview President Biden. I would love to interview any past president or politician from any side to get your perspective on how best to fight human trafficking. Now, my story, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time and don't even understand what it is, because again, I think a lot of you will be watching this podcast for the first time, and it may be your first introduction. Like I said, I spent 12 years with the U.S. government as a special agent, 10 of those years on the southern border. In 2013, I got involved in a couple of cases that I overextended myself. I went beyond what the jurisdictional limitations of my job allowed me to do. And one of those cases was in Haiti with a little boy named Gardy Marty who had been kidnapped, U.S. citizen, kidnapped in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And the other one was a case that I was supposed to be consulting on only and training on in Colombia. Both of those cases, it was determined, weren't hitting the requirement of a U.S. case, and I was told to come home and shut down. Now, you can learn about the case that happened in Haiti through a documentary called Operation Toussaint on Amazon Prime. You can also go to PragerU, and there's a whole series called Light in the Darkness that just came out a few weeks ago that tells the story also of what happened in Haiti. If you want to know what happened in the Colombia operation, watch Sound of Freedom. It's a depiction based on the truth of what happened in that operation. Another documentary by Angel Studios will be coming out very soon called Triple Take, which is the documentary form of Sound of Freedom. You can see the actual footage. Some of the real footage, of course, you see at the end of the film, Sound of Freedom. So that's basically, in a nutshell, my story, my life purpose. The objective that I've always set to do is rescue more children, help more children, whether it's rescuing them or providing for them, getting them adopted. My wife and I adopted 2 children that we rescued on that very first Haiti operation. Again, you can learn about that at the PragerU series, Light in the Darkness, or Operation Toussaint on Amazon Prime. So I want you to have that understanding. So when you've gone undercover as many times as I have, and you've seen the worst of the worst, believe me when I tell you, politics is the last thing you care about. You will go and talk to anyone who is in charge of something that might be able to deploy resources to rescue children. So I want to ask all of you, put your politics away. Is there one issue left on the table? I used to think so until they politicized the border and they're politicizing Sound of Freedom. These are real kids and they deserve to be respected and their stories deserve to be respected. And everybody, The Guardian, Rolling Stone, everybody else who's come out against this story, you owe an apology to those children. I don't care. You think you're hurting me? You're not hurting me. You think you're hurting Jim Caviezel, Eduardo? You're not hurting. We're big boys. You're hurting children. You're disrespecting their story, and you owe them an apology. And they'll be coming out and telling their story very soon because a lot of them are dying to do that. So it's pretty disgusting what you've all done, because you're just hurting kids. You're either wittingly or unwittingly running interference for pedophiles and human traffickers. That's not a good place to be. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt that it's unwittingly, that you're doing something else. I've talked about that and I will in other places. But the bottom line is this. I want you to listen to someone who very well might be the next president of the United States. Okay? And I want you to learn from what this person did and how he responded when he was president of the United States to the plight of vulnerable children. Put politics aside. The kids deserve way better than you putting politics in front of this. Put it out of the way. Clear the road, clear your head, and just listen to this interview and see if some good ideas are discussed about how we together can rescue children. Thank you so much, and God bless.
They could care less about children. They groom... They groom their own children. Groom and mutilate their own fucking children. They could care less about children. Trump is insert whatever fucking delusional shit they have. Anyway, another reason they don't like this guy is, and I'll put up his picture again, is he's calling them out for their shit. I've been saying this before I even knew about Tom Ballard. I've been saying this. I've written books. It has never occurred ever in my head going, it may sell a lot of books. If I wrote a children's book about what I do with my pee-pee and sold it to schools, never entered my fucking mind. But these people are doing it, and I have 200 plus videos over on my YouTube from Grassroots Army, which is a great site too. Go check them out. They keep you up to date on parents going after school boards who push this shit. Anyway, there's another reason they don't like the Sound of Freedom movie is because he literally calls them out for their grooming bullshit. So here's more on him calling out the loony left for their bullshit.
You're the expert. Can you break down how would you describe grooming?
Oh, absolutely. First, the pedophiles want a kid who's sexualized, who will participate and choose to have sex with them. That's what they want. But you got to get a kid sexualized first. You know what porn does to an adult brain? I mean, I've talked to porn addicts. An adult brain. it changes the chemistry of the brain. It actually creates a damage of the brain. Kids whose brains are just like crystallizing still, they're little sponges. So you give a third grader this, and they're giving third graders this stuff. And then you expose them to TikTok and let them have these kids, by the time they're 13, they're sex robots. They know, they're teaching kids to masturbate too in some schools.
Yes.
Like, that's part of it. Go to your special corner and touch yourself while you look at this. So these kids are already sexualized to the point where, and again, pedophiles are salivating. Like, hey, they're doing our job for us. These groups, the leftists out there, they're doing our job for us.
They're laughing. They're laughing right now.
They're salivating.
But you say
laughing,
they are doing the job for us. Why not they are doing the job? Mm-hmm. The groups are one and the same. I mean,
you're right.
I made this argument. There was I can't remember exactly what the story was, but I was critical of literal grooming. In fact, let's go back to pre-Elon Musk Twitter. There was an image of adult men showing graphic adult images to children. And I said, this is grooming. I got suspended. They deleted the tweet and they said, you can't post this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I can't call out the abuse. They said it was offensive. It was hate speech.
Wow.
So I criticize a story and I get these leftist publications attacking me for it. My response was, if my position is that child abusers are bad and you rush to their defense and attack me over it, my only assumption is you're a child abuser or you are in support of child abuse.
Both are wrong.
Yeah. They get so angry about it, but I'm like, there's no legitimate reason to defend what they're doing in these schools.
And for the same reason, no legitimate reason to attack Sound of Freedom.
Exactly.
But it's the same motive. And these guys also, every one of most of these publications, by the way, you're going to find they're also promoting this. Stop calling them pedophiles. That's mean. Call them
MAP, or what I call mobile bore site panels, okay? That's in my cult thing too. If you will consider, I think it's like in the 40s. If you would consider chemically castrating a pedophile cruel and inhumane, but chemically castrating a child perfectly dandy, then you're in a fucking cult.
Minor attracted persons and add them to the LGBTQ.
I'm going to call pederasts.
Yep, I will absolutely not.
Make it worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Perverts.
Do you think that I've heard yesterday? I think you mentioned the average age of a child that sees pornography on the internet is 7 years old.
Average first exposure by some statistics,
and
is
also
7.
5,000% increase in child trafficking. Are they somehow related? Is
Absolutely.
this the grooming?
Absolutely, because they want willing victims. They want willing victims.
Let me ask you something about. We've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks. If someone goes out into public holding up a graphic image of adults engaging in adult activities, that person gets arrested. No question. Cop comes and arrests them. The internet is a publicly accessible space in much the same way. But for some reason, we have not enforced laws. It's preventing people from posting obscene, lewd, lascivious images in places children have access to. Why? What's the difference? Now, I know there's a lot of libertarians who are like, oh, you're talking dangerous talk, Tim. We got to have freedom here. And I'm like, we don't have the freedom to go and put up an advertising truck with a TV on it, park it in the middle of Times Square and play porn. You can't do that. Right. They will come and tow that vehicle and arrest you on the spot. So how is it that you can go on a social media platform children use and do the exact same thing? That's a question I have. Perhaps I don't have the moral authority or the understanding to say what we should or shouldn't do. I lean towards maybe we should enforce it as illegal as it should be. I'm wondering if you would agree.
It is illegal to transmit child pornography over the internet. It is illegal. So,
or what your thoughts would be on that?
I mean, I do. It's this weird double standard. I'd say the same thing. If you see what kids are doing, you're going to talk about this tomorrow on your show. But what adults are doing to kids in these forums and these parades they're doing, or the drag queen shows. I mean, you've seen the videos. They're exposing themselves. If that same person walked to a school playground and did that same thing, they'd be arrested. But again, they're still kids. They're kids in both places. And here we are again. And there are states, I think Tennessee, who are trying to create laws that protect kids from that material, that you can't just post whatever. There's certain barriers. There's ID requirements that have to be verified for a kid to get through a certain, a wall in the internet. I think that's important to protect kids.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention here, you were sort of talking about genderqueer and a lot of this perverse literature.
what's the use if they're going to teach it in schools?
That they're putting into the school system. One thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that this isn't something on the fringes, and even what you were talking about with respect to the pedophile who's depicted at the beginning of Sound of Freedom, who has written about how he thinks these are natural impulses and society's puritanical. This person, unfortunately, is part of a movement which is much broader and more mainstream than people realize. Alfred Kinsey, Wardell Pomeroy, all of the premier sex researchers who we are told to look to as experts and pioneers said similar things. Kinsey wrote in his book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, that the reason a girl is traumatized when she's abused, when she's underage, is because the parents made a big deal out of it and not because of what actually happened. This is in his published work. This is the person who's credited as being the first person to scientifically study sex. His first book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, was published in 1948 and sold several 100,000 copies. This was a textbook. People were reading it. And there's a table infamously titled Table 34 that includes data tables which only could have been collected through the abuse of children. I'm not going to graphically explain what those data tables purport to measure, but it's hundreds and hundreds of boys under the age of 15 who had to have been raped for him to get that information. This is mainstream. It's public knowledge. His author Wardell Pomeroy was in Time magazine in the 1980s saying out loud that he thinks incest between adults and children can be, in his words, beneficial. This is not even hiding under the rug. There's an interview on the Phil Donahue show with people from the Kinsey Institute and Judith Riesman, and they're defending all of this, saying that it was okay. So these aren't fringe weirdos here and there. This stuff is way more mainstream than people realize.
It is. It's just taken this long. But he's the father, by the way, not only of our modern sex education programs, like this stuff, he's also the father of the pedophile movement.
Yeah.
It all derives from the same sick, backwards falsehoods.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I mean, you clearly know your stuff on that.
This is brilliant.
You're talking about this pedophile at the beginning of the film, and also a real guy that you studied who made that claim that all men have these predilections or whatever.
And he thinks everyone steals.
It's exactly like it's the projection. It's the world must be the way I see it. Everyone must see the world the way I do. There's no other explanation. Certainly, I'll put it this way. I don't think anyone's ever accused these people of being smart. Something's clearly wrong with them. But it's like, my dude, every country on the planet to varying degrees, wants to stop you, right? The United States is actively in the process of trying to stop you. Clearly, the world thinks what you are doing is wrong. To believe otherwise is insanity. These people, but like I said, no one's, I don't know. I wouldn't accuse people of being smart. Even Epstein was not smart enough, right?
Right.
I gotta know, man. Like, after having experienced the last 20 years and making the movie and everything, how do you? Do you have kids too? I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but like, how do you educate your children about sexuality now? Do they need to be educated younger? Do they just need the words to understand the body parts so that if they see something, they can tell you? I mean, the idea of like saying no, go away. I don't know that can ever work, but.
Let me elaborate a little bit on that.
Please.
If there's a kid who doesn't understand what's happening to them and they can't articulate it, how do you navigate that problem?
Right. So my wife's in charge of that. I try to support, but what she does, and this requires actual parenting to do this. You have to know your kids intuitively, and moms have the.
Oh shit, parenting. Wow, that's true. That leaves a lot of people in the dark.
Gift. My wife certainly does. The gifts I wish I had, but I don't. And so it's interesting. Each of my kids have the conversation at a different age. Some it's 7, some it's 10. Some they weren't ready till they're 12 or 13. My wife literally prays over when it's time to say what and what to say and what details to give. Also, listen to your kids ask questions. So you got to give them the basics at a certain point, right? Like you said, they have to have the vocabulary to be able to understand where dangers come in. But the kids will ask and satisfy their curiosity. Otherwise, the playground will. Mm-hmm. And you don't want the playground to satisfy their curiosity. So Catherine listens. Okay, you're going somewhere. Let's sit down. I will be the one that gives you the answer before somebody else does. So,
did you give them internet access when they were younger?
It's the same process. So some of my kids were ready at 10 to begin monitored. Some not till they're 13. It depends on.
Good for you.
It depends. Each it's customized.
It's got to be monitored, because I want people. I don't know where this culture came from, this idea of like the kid can go online, have fun. You're basically saying you are giving your kid a private jet to go anywhere in the world and see whatever they want. Clearly, you would never allow that. You're not going to let your kid go down to the, you can't go north of this street. You can't go 4 blocks out. We tell our kids, when I'm growing up, it's like, don't go past this street, don't go past this street. And we'd listen for the most part. Come home when the lights come on. There were limitations on how far we could go. If you went too far and you got lost, you got kidnapped, something bad happened to you, how your parents going to find out? The internet may not be the exact same thing in terms of physical space, but you can access literally anything. And that's ridiculous to allow a kid to do whatever. Imagine if you were like, you're allowed to go wherever you want, son, even the adult bookstore down the street. Go, like, no way. And not only that, they wouldn't let you in. It's illegal.
Right.
But the internet is different. Yep. They let kids do whatever they want. They don't think.
And yet they have drag story hour and drag shows for kids now. What the fuck?
Think about it. Parents really need to understand it's not just, quote unquote, the internet. It's unrestrained access to some of the worst and the best things humanity has created. Not every kid is ready for all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, kids, I would say there is a large quantity of things on the internet no one could handle seeing.
Yeah.
Let alone children.
With one click.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
there's videos of murder.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day there was a viral video of 3 guys murdering someone that was going around. And if you were just some kid and your parents gave you a phone or a computer, you saw a graphic and brutal murder take place. The children should not be watching that stuff.
Well, you made this point about the fact that you wouldn't be allowed in an adult bookstore if you were just walking down the street, or a place that sells pornography. I shouldn't use
and now
euphemisms. And not only that, but Pornhub banned access in the state of Utah because Utah passed a law saying we need to have stricter methods of verifying people's ages so that kids don't end up viewing porn on this website. That made Pornhub very upset. So not only is it the case that kids are allowed into these like digital establishments, the companies actually throw a fit when they aren't. And I'll also mention this. My dad made this point when I was a kid, and he was referring to television. I think it's even more pressing with internet today, but he said this is the first time in human history where parents allow complete strangers into their home to teach their children.
Yep.
And now it's two-way. Your kid has an exchange with them. The Trevor Project posted this interface that they were advertising to talk to somebody about your sexual identity, and if you hit the escape button 3 times, it deletes all of your browser history, and they were advertising that.
Wow.
They were advertising that. So if an adult walks in the room, hit escape 3 times, all of it's cleared.
Now, what would you say about an adult who goes to a kid, tries to talk to him about sex, and says, don't tell your parents?
That's called a groomer. And that's literally what's going on in your public schools.
Horrifying. It's
like textbook.
Absolutely. It's horrifying. It's grooming. And it's part of, again, the pedophile movement. They've been saying it for years. Separate kids from the parents.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast.
Yeah, I got that from Tim Cast. But the smart guy knows what's fucking going on. I've been saying it longer, well, probably not longer, but he has a larger platform. And this next clip, so true. It's how the Biden border. Where do you think these kids are coming from? They're coming across the fucking border, people, and the school shit and all this stuff, Biden stuff. I want you to think about something. The person in charge of America's health, including mental health, is supposedly an admiral. It's an overweight man who thinks he's a fucking woman, is pretending to be a woman. And I use the word fucking pretend. So you think about that while you're listening to this, okay?
What are you guys going to do when our ocean level rises?
Oh, you're full of shit.
$14 million a day are landing in the pocket of smugglers and traffickers, thanks to the Biden-Harris border policy. The only compassionate policy is border enforcement.
This is Tyler O'Neill, managing editor at the Daily Signal, and I'm honored to be joined by a bona fide hero in Tim Ballard and the guy who got to play him in the upcoming film, The Sound of Freedom. It is a masterpiece. You did an amazing job, just as you did in Passion of the Christ.
You saw the film?
Yeah, I saw it last night. So it was very moving. I gotta say, I'm honored to have both of you here with me today.
Thank you very much.
So I want to get right into it. Tim, the story is fantastic, surprising. You were telling me they even didn't want to include some of the details from the story because people wouldn't believe that it's true. But it is a true story. And would you just briefly introduce it and how you got involved in this important work?
Well, I had spent 12 years as a special agent, undercover operator for the Department of Homeland Security investigations, working child crimes, child trafficking. And it was kind of an evolution. The first few years, it was mostly just end user collector cases of, people who are possessing, distributing child exploitation material. And always wondering, where are the kids? I see these videos, it breaks my heart. I got to describe them. There's a scene in the movie that breaks my heart where, Jim is crying as he's having to describe these horrific sex scenes of children. And when I say children, I mean average age 7, 6, 5. Okay. And then in 2006, the laws changed. And for the first time, U.S. agents could actually go overseas and prosecute Americans for engaging in sex with children overseas and prosecute them as if they had committed the crime on U.S. soil. So that opened up my horizons, and I started finding the kids. And that was a frustrating process, though, because the law didn't stipulate how much time I would get or how much flexibility I would have or creativity I'd have. So I'd be given a week or whatever to find it. I'd always find the kids, but if I couldn't find the nexus back to the United States, come home. But I've seen kids. I can rescue. It doesn't matter. Come home. So it all kind of came to a head for me in 2012 when I was working 2 different cases, actually one in Haiti and one in Colombia. And I was told, come home on both of them. They were both major cases, a significant, hit against human traffickers would have taken place. And the film only focuses on the one in Colombia. And there I am thinking, they're asking me to come home once again, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay. And that means I have to quit my job. And I call my wife, hoping she'll say, get your butt home. Are you kidding me? We got 6 kids to feed. And I wanted her to say, because I was being a coward, but I knew it was the right thing. And she didn't. She didn't read my script. And she said, of course you're going to stay. And I said, are you kidding me? And then she ended that argument with Mary Sorvino, the Academy Award winning actress, plays Catherine in the film opposite Jim. And in the film, you see her say to me on the phone, you quit your job and rescue those kids. What she really said to me, because they didn't want to make me look like the coward that I was, because I was like, I'm coming home. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be part of this. And she said to me very sternly, and she's usually pretty sweet, but this is righteous indignation at its finest. And this is a quote, because it was that powerful and it pierced my heart when she said it. She said, quote, I will not let you jeopardize my salvation by not doing this. And it breaks my heart because not only is she losing our income, but she possibly, very good chance, maybe 50-50, she's going to lose me. Yeah. She's willing to risk becoming a widow because she knew that if I quit my job and stayed, and Glenn Beck, bless his heart, raised the money for us so that we could even do the operation because I had no money to do it. In the end, it was unbelievable. We rescued over 120 women and children. The film only gets into a piece of it. There's 54 rescued on that island, but the op was bigger than that. And the movie didn't have time to get into it. And that is the basis of the film. And there's so much more, as you know, attached to that whole story, but that's the basis of the film. And when we did that big hit on October 11th of 2014, it made national news in the United States. Scott Pelley reported, CBS News, and Eduardo Verastegui, the producer, saw the clip. He had been working on a script with Alejandro Monteverde about human trafficking that was fiction. And they saw this story and they said, well, maybe there's a true story here. And that began the process of Sound of Freedom.
And Jim, what was it like for you, seeing these scenes? It rips your heart out. They never actually show exploitation of children in the film.
I demanded they didn't. So if you make you don't make pedophile material here. You can't,
but you can't make that film.
Right. But you had to do the incredible job of acting, the part of watching this exploitation, trying to describe it, typing it out. And we could see your eyes. I mean, just watching your eyes in that scene spoke. What was it like to do a scene like that?
I don't know how he does it. It took everything I had. And I taught him my own children. I adopted 3 of my children from China, and I saw the things that I felt were nefarious, even with adoption and all that stuff. And there are dangers in the adoption world with children and globally. So that was very easy for me to transfer. Like, what if this was your own kid? And that started the conversation in my heart. And then I wouldn't even hesitate. If someone was going to hurt my family, especially my children, my wife. It would just hit. There's some things where it's like, I can't live without them, and that's what love is, and I'd take a bullet for him. So put myself in Tim's situation, and then I had a lot of, I was so grateful that he came to me. And, I remember at one point he came down, and I remember telling Tim, I think we've got lightning in a bottle. And I said that, and he said, that's good, right? Or something. And then I said, yeah, but it's going to be hard. Why? Well, because when it's this good, darkness gets very, very upset, because it's not a little light, it's a mega light. And it's going to draw a lot of attention. But we're in we struggled making it. We struggled getting the money together. We lost our money. We lost our studios that were supporting us, and yet we were just getting by a little bit at a time. Faith bonded us together. Eduardo, once we got it done, Eduardo Verostegui had to, bear the burden, try to get this film in studio after studios like nobody will want it, even though they're moved, even though they get up and they, you could clearly see that it had the power to change a direction. But, we had the same issue with The Passion of the Christ, and that thing ended up becoming a juggernaut. And this one is showing, people are buying tickets right now. And major problem we have is that we don't have enough theaters. And so that's why we've been telling people, God, you got to get out and buy tickets like you did on The Passion, because you created a way for us. So imagine if you're in a hydroplane speedboat and you see a wall coming. We need people to tear that thing down, or we're going to go right into it.
Well, when you talk about the evil here involved in human trafficking, in the sex slavery of children.
Yes.
And it's the kind of thing that beggars the imagination. You can barely understand how people would do something like this.
No, I understand it. I had to understand what they were thinking. I had to understand. I started from both ends: corruption, why power, why seduced to people do pretty much anything for big major power at one end, whether it be honeypotted or what. On the other end, you got people starting with. So I worked with Tim, but Tim is very busy going on. But I had guys that helped me to understand the psychology. Or you starting older with pornography, and you just keep going younger and younger and younger. I said, well, why would a man be interested in a unformed woman? He says, it's the innocent, it's a demonic thing that this innocent child. And
remember, they're doing it in your schools too. Demonic, yeah.
It becomes more attractive to them.
Well, last night you briefly mentioned this idea of pedophile laws, I think you called them.
Yes.
Where and
making it easier for the trafficker and the pedophiles.
How
they're enticing
American society doing that? What particularly?
Yeah. So last year we did a big operation. There's a 4-part docuseries coming out, produced by Tony Robbins, Mel Gibson also involved as consulting on this. He was part of the story when Ukraine was attacked. Mel Gibson called me within hours. Okay, and I know Mel through Jim, and he said, "Hey, I got all these Ukrainian orphans that I help, that I support, and I'm worried about them. Can you go?" What a crazy ask! Can you go into Ukraine while bombs are dropping and go find these kids? And he didn't know that a few hours earlier, my wife came to me in tears and said the same thing. We were working on adopting about 7 children out of Ukraine at the time, not for through our foundation, Children Need Families. And so she says the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mel Gibson and my wife are both telling me to go to Ukraine while bombs are dropping, right? And I always was raised with the idea. I could just see him. He was in Budapest filming, and I thought to myself, I was raised with the thought that if Mel Gibson and your wife ever tell you to do something, and within hours of each other, you should probably do it, right? Who wouldn't? So I had to go to Ukraine. And I partnered with an amazing group that I sit on the board of Aerial Recovery, and we went in and started rescuing these children. 6,000 in the end. We got out of the war zone, but we were looking. 6,000. Yeah, we were looking for human traffickers because we know that they prey upon vulnerability, wars, hurricanes, whatever it is. And sure enough, we lock into this pedophile ring. Now it's a frightening ring because it's a political party that was out of Holland called the PNVD. Lots of media on them. They were trying to legalize sex with children. They thought a 3-year-old could consent to sex. Well, even in the Dutch arrested them in 2020, which is very hard to get arrested in Holland. I don't. Okay. You got to be really red light district. You got to be really bad, okay, to get arrested in Holland. They were arrested in 2020, fugitives. They ran, and they were hiding. No one knew who they were. Well, they rear their ugly heads. The leader, this guy named Nelson Matlin, he raises. I'm literally in Poland at the time. At our staging operation for Ukraine, and I get this information that this guy in Mexico is trying to traffic kids out of Ukraine, and so I go undercover. The Dutch asset who gave me that information infiltrated me, and I'm undercover talking to this guy. Well, in the end, we ended up. In fact, just yesterday, 2 of the guys were convicted in Ecuador because it led us to Ecuador, a child sex hotel. These pedophiles from Holland and set up. But we'll get into that another time, okay? But the point I'm making is, I had to study their literature. This was a political platform. This was a political party. And what I started recognizing is
You mean Democrat?
I named them I call it the pedophile network doctrines. Okay. Yeah. It's they include things like separate children from parents because parents are a bad influence. The state knows best. Sexualize kids. Let them see pornography too.
Karl Marx.
3, take God out of education because that just gets in the way. And kids consent. Children can consent to anything. At 12 years old, they should be able to vote. They should be able to do anything. Now, what am I seeing here? My stomach is getting sick as I'm reading this. I read this every day. It's the woke left agenda. I'm not saying that they're colluding or talking. It doesn't matter. It's the same dark source. But they are pedophiles are sitting back right now going, we've been pushing this agenda for decades. And now we don't have to push anymore because the left is taking care of it for us in America. And
your president is making it pretty much fucking legal.
And this whole trans voice on children. Again, I'm libertarian. Adults, do what you want. I'll fight for your right to do whatever you want. Okay, in terms of adult, I'm talking about children. Yeah. And what they're saying is children can consent to having their bodies filled with a chemical that will destroy the reproductive system. They can consent to ripping apart their genitalia. This is insanity. Why? In and of itself, it's horrible. But what it's going to lead to is what the pedophiles have been asking for. If you can consent to that, guess what? What's more fluid than gender? Age. I adopted 2 children in Haiti that we rescued back in 2014.
Well, really quick, we don't have much time.
Okay.
I want to hear you talk a little bit about the border because you spent a decade down there.
I can't believe you stopped me right there, man. You got to have me back.
I got to.
This is too important.
But yeah, I wanted just briefly.
Okay.
How is the Biden administration enabling this?
Well, look, the economy of pedophilia. Right? The United States is the #1 consumer of child exploitation material. We are the demand. So that means that traffickers want to get children into that dark market. There's a lot of money to be made here. The United States, also according to State Department, is in the top 3 countries for destination countries for human trafficking. So there's every incentive to get children into America, into the black markets here of pedophilia. And so when I find out that in the last couple of years, at least 85,000, I think it's much higher than that, but at least 85,000 unaccompanied minors, thousands of them, I've seen the CBP reports, are under 5 years old. Why is a 3-year-old showing up at the border? Well, I can tell you why, because they show up with a name. The name is the sponsor that they're given by the trafficker. HHS gets the kids, and they, by law, have to call the number. Hi, we have Jose Gonzalez, Mr. George Smith. Yeah, that's my kid, whatever. Okay, they used to actually fly down and have to pick the kid up. Not anymore. Our taxpayer dollars will then send the kid by plane or bus to the sponsor. No background check, no DNA, nothing. And they deliver the kids. Our taxpayer dollars are literally, for the first time in American history, our taxpayer dollars are going to facilitate the last leg of a child trafficking event.
This is why the loony left should be in charge of nothing having to do with fucking kids.
The border is open.
The border is wide open. It's $14 million a day are landing in the pocket of smugglers and traffickers, thanks to the Biden-Harris border policy. The only compassionate policy is border enforcement, barriers, walls. Why? Because, and the Sound of Freedom talks about this, because the walls and the barriers lead the children who are being hurt into that funnel of rescue. Trained women and men in uniform are there. Those kids want to go through the port of entry. Those kids pray for a wall. The wall will save their lives. But let's take it all down. Let's open it all up. Kids are being abused by the thousands, and our taxpayer dollars are going for it, are actually funding it.
Do you have anything to say briefly on these?
I just turned to. I'm asking people, you have soldiers that fight for you, and you say, "Oh, we love you. Thank you for doing that." But we all have to be soldiers in this fight. And when you say, "Well, it's really too hard," I said, "Look, a parent has to have strength and fortitude to defend their own children. My God." And this film is something where, when you watch it, you learn how routinely it occurs. You also learn the warning signs. That's good for the public. It weaponizes that individual, the parent or whoever that watches this film. But when, the chips are down, when God asks you, in this film you see it, can we love our children more than we fear evil? When God tells you to do something, you don't hesitate. God's children are no longer for sale.
Thank you so much again, Tyler O'Neill with Daily Signal.
In this town, you can't talk about gay people. Everybody gets all worked up. Stop it. They're sensitive. Why? Because they suck dick? Stop it. Okay, because they suck dick, they get to have a parade and fuck up traffic for 3 days. What the fuck is that? Girls, y'all suck dick. Where's your parade? Right. Where's your parade? And don't get it twisted. I'm not homophobic, okay? I'm just saying, okay, I ain't willing to take a 15-mile detour so little bunny foo-foo can walk up and down the street going, yay for dick, I like it in the butt. Now when gas is $2.23 a gallon, fuck you, Bubbles. Go suck dick in your bedroom. I ain't got no problem there. So get the fuck out of the road. And gay people just take shit that used to be everybody's and make it gay. Remember when you was a kid, you used to draw a picture of your house, you put a nice big rainbow in the sky? Gay. They done took the rainbow. I want the rainbow back. You can't have the rainbow, goddammit. We didn't vote on this shit. I didn't get an email. Fuck you, greedy bastards. How many colors do you need, goddammit? You already got pink, and now you need the whole fucking spectrum? Jesus Christ. And what the fuck does a rainbow have to do with sucking dick anyway? Ain't like it's magically delicious, huh, girl?
All right, I'm back. Before we get into the next segment here, which is me debunking the shit that the loony left have been passing out. Red states have a higher crime rate and blah, blah, blah. Really? We need to go to one because he's been messaging me during that "you're a bunch of grooming pricks" segment. Let's see. I got to go to find out if it's this one or let's find out. Nope, not that one. Okay. Oh, it's still that's Carol. All right. Anyway, I'll play it for you once, and let me see. I think maybe they blocked me after they made their last comment, which is standard for these cowards. Oh, nope, there he is. Let me see. Oh, let me see. How far do I need to go back? As for you're missing out. I see. You mean? Oh, here he goes. This is Facebook, not Oxford. He's never been to fucking Oxford because. Oh, here we go. I gotta starting, and I'm gonna include his name. Fuck him. He's a douche. Anyway, this was during. I was using my phone during this, so make sure. Is desktop audio open? Yes, it's open, so we can hear it.
John Campbell. Sean Armstrong, this is Facebook, not the Oxford Debating Society. It's pure meaningless entertainment and you don't write the rules on how I respond. I couldn't give a flying fuck what you think of me. I'm here to poke trolls. You go get your fandom to stroke that overstuffed ego of yours. Like. Reply. 30M. Active. Sean Armstrong. John Campbell, my ego. You mean you know I'll destroy you? Thanks for the affirmation. Like. Reply. 29M. Edited. Active. Sean Armstrong. John Campbell, soon, I'll be giving you the information that you asked for. You're missing out. You're still in the podcast. You're just not gonna be there to hear it. Like. Reply. 25M. John Campbell. Sean Armstrong, fly at it, sunshine. What do you do when you own a lib on social media, anyway? Do you pull out the stiffy it gives you and run down the street waving it and proclaiming your victory at the top of your lungs? Quite an accomplishment, bwahahahahaha. Like. Reply. 18M. Active. Sean Armstrong. John Campbell, right now we're discussing the loony left grooming children, and how it helps sex traffickers, so I don't really need to scream. Like. Reply. 16M. Active. Sean Armstrong. John Campbell, soon, we'll be discussing the Blue City murder problem.
Which is the information these assholes asked for a week ago on Facebook, that I said, come over to the podcast and I'll give you the information, because it's not something you do like in 5 minutes. It's something you do. And then for those who have Instaface or follow me on Instaface, you know there's a moron there that we call Cheese Doodle, who I think he's blocked me now. I'm not even sure. He won't even speak to me anymore. Don't really care, but I sent him an invitation tonight. But he actually cited the study I'm about to fucking destroy. So, tonight, here's the Blue City murder problem. Because for some reason, the loony left would like to say, oh man, the red state has the highest violent crime. Well, it wouldn't if we kicked all the fucking loony leftists out. So, and to back up my statement, here you go.
Facts are powerful and stubborn things. Unfortunately, some on the left have tried to advance their arguments by using facts about state murder rates that, while technically true, are at best meaningless when taken out of context and at worst misleading and downright dangerous when used as the basis for public policy decisions. Enter the red state murder problem. It sounds ominous, but it's not. It is also highly misleading. Those on the left note that their soft on crime policies have wreaked havoc in the cities where they have implemented those policies. It is not hard to understand why reforms such as ending cash bail, defunding the police, refusing to prosecute entire categories of crimes, letting thousands of convicted felons out of prison early, significantly cutting the prison population, and other progressive ideas have led to massive spikes in crime, particularly violent crime, including murder, in the communities where those on the left have implemented them. Left-wing politicians and their backers recognize that as time, obfuscation, finger-pointing, and blame shift. One liberal organization so far as to publish a study arguing that Republicans are actually to blame for the spike in murders across the country.
It's not a study.
Except as a tool with which to score political points. More to the point, when the crime statistics from the deep blue big cities within these otherwise deep red states are removed, what happens? The state-level crime rates fall, in some cases, dramatically. Crime trends until recently, crime, including violent crime, has been declining across the United States since the peak of the last crime wave in 1992. Not surprisingly, since incarceration trails crime waves, incarceration rates have also been falling dramatically since they last peaked in 2008.3. Unfortunately, however, the 25-plus year drop in crime since 1992 has ended for many cities across the United States. The rise in crime, especially violent crime, started taking place around 2015 after the confluence of a series of events that took place over the course of a few years. Those events include police-involved shootings of black community members, for the Defund the Police movement, 5. The election of rogue prosecutors funded or inspired by George Soros and other elitist billionaires, 6. And the Ferguson/Minneapolis effect, by which unwarranted public scrutiny of police resulted in police drastically reducing proactive policing. Crime was rising in select cities across the country before the global COVID-19 pandemic struck in March 2020, but it rose even more significantly after the death of George Floyd on May 25, 2020. The cumulative effect of these events contributed to and in large part set the conditions for increased crime across much of the country, especially in cities where the toxic trio of rogue prosecutors, defund the police zealotry, and demonization/demoralization of the police existed. In those cities and others with some mixture of this toxic trio, crime has exploded across most categories, including but not limited to murder. As the old saying goes, the best pattern and practice of demonizing in states that have the real crime rate problem, especially and sometimes, murder rates are highest in cities with Republican mayors. The crime rate is the number of crimes reported to law enforcement agencies for every 100,000 persons within a given population. It is calculated by dividing the number of reported crimes by the total population. The result is then multiplied by 100,000. Not surprisingly, dozens of media outlets, including The Washington Post, The Hill, Inside Edition, PolitiFact, The Daily Beast, Los Angeles Magazine, The San Francisco Examiner, NBC News, and others, picked up the study and breathlessly reported on its findings. Even Paul Krugman, New York Times opinion columnist and economist, has joined the echo chamber, albeit in Divorced from Reality opinion piece wherein he opines that nobody knows for surge. We have a pretty good idea, and many voters apparently are starting to figure it out as well. The study's authors and those reporting its results took advantage of the fact that the average reader does not know much about crime trends, how crime rates are calculated, and at what level city, county, state, etc. these statistics should be reviewed. Because of that, the third way study sounds important and shocking to most readers who visit these news websites. As noted earlier, however, most crime is hyper-localized, so the fundamental flaw with the study and the reason it does not deserve any serious consideration is that the murder rate in each state is largely a function of the large number of murders in a state's biggest city or cities. A supermajority of those cities, even in otherwise red states, are deep blue and run by left-wing ideologues. When you remove the crime-infested, homicide-riddled cities from the state murder rate featured in the third-way study, you dramatically lower the murder rate for that state, appending their conclusions and exposing the piece for what it really is, a straightforward attempt at political projection dressed up as a study. Said another way, Kessler and Murdoch did their level best as political operatives to blame their political opponents for the very thing, rising crime, that leftist policies at the city and county levels have caused.
So basically, kick all the loony leftists out of your fucking state and you'll have less crime.
While a state's murder rate is perhaps politically interesting, a more accurate reflection of what is actually happening on the ground is gained by reviewing localized murder rates, such as murder rates in a city or county. What does this review show? Table 1 lists the 30 cities with the highest murder rates in the United States as of June 30, 2022. Not surprisingly, of those 30 cities, 27 have Democratic mayors, the exceptions being Lexington and Jacksonville, which have Republican mayors, and Las Vegas, whose mayor is an independent. And within those 30 cities there are at least 14 Soros-backed or Soros-inspired rogue prosecutors. Those Soros-bought and paid for or inspired rogue prosecutors include Jason Williams, New Orleans Parish District Attorney; Marilyn Mosby, Baltimore City State's Attorney; Kim Gardner, St. Louis Circuit Attorney; John T. Chisholm, Milwaukee County District Attorney; Larry Krasner, Philadelphia District Attorney; Kim Fox, Cook County, Chicago, State's Attorney. Table 1. Cities with highest homicide rates, as of June 2022. City: New Orleans, Louisiana. Number of homicides: 145. Homicide rate per 100,000 population: 36.8. City: Baltimore, Maryland. Number of homicides: 174. Homicide rate per 100,000 population: 29.1. City: Birmingham, Alabama. Number of homicides: 59. Homicide rate per 100,000 population: 28.0. City: St. Louis, Missouri. Number of homicides: 83. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 27.8. City. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Number of homicides. 112. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 19.0. City. Cleveland, Ohio. Number of homicides. 64. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 16.9. City. Rochester, New York. Number of homicides. 34. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 16.6. City. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Number of homicides. 240. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 15.1. City. Atlanta, Georgia. Number of homicides. 74. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 14.9. City. Kansas City, Missouri. Number of homicides. 73. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 14.6. City. Washington, D.C. Number of homicides. 104. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 14.6. City. Richmond, Virginia. Number of homicides. 31. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 13.3. City. Oakland, California. Number of homicides. 54. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 12.3. City. Cincinnati, Ohio. Number of homicides. 36. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 11.8. City. Chicago, Illinois. Number of homicides. 304.
This is some boring shit, but this is what they fucking asked
Homicide
for.
rate per 100,000 population. 11.2. City. Louisville, Kentucky. Number of homicides. 73. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 10.8. City. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Number of homicides. 56. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 10. City. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Number of homicides. 43. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 9.9. City. Dallas, Texas. Number of homicides. 122. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 9.0. City. Nashville, Tennessee. Number of homicides. 55. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 8.0. City. Durham, North Carolina. Number of homicides. 22. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 7.7. City. Lexington, Kentucky. Number of homicides. 23. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 7.1. City. Jacksonville, Florida. Number of homicides. 63. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 6.8. City. Greensboro, North Carolina. Number of homicides. 19. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 6.3. City. Los Angeles, California. Number of homicides. 176. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 4.4. City. Colorado Springs, Co. Number of homicides. 19. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 3.9. City. Las Vegas, Nevada. Number of homicides. 63. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 3.7. City. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Number of homicides. 13. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 2.9. City. San Francisco, California. Number of homicides. 23. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 2.6. City. New York, New York. Number of homicides.
Sometimes I wish I could just... Sometimes I wish I could just act like the loony left. You're a big duty head and just... I wouldn't have to do all this shit. But I would rather be intelligent.
197. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 2.4. Raul Torres, Bernalillo County, Albuquerque, District Attorney. Mike Freeman, Hennepin County, Minneapolis, Attorney. John Kreutzat, Dallas County District Attorney. Glenn R. Funk, Nashville District Attorney General. Santana DeBerry, Durham District Attorney. George Gaskin, Los Angeles County District Attorney. Shiza Budin, San Francisco District Attorney. And Alvin Bragg, Manhattan District Attorney. There were 2,554 homicides in those 30 cities through June 2022. In the 14 cities with Soros-backed rogue prosecutors, there were 1,752 homicides, representing 68% of homicides in the 30 top homicide cities in the United States. Every Soros rogue prosecutor listed above is a Democrat. A more detailed analysis. For a deeper dive into the numbers, we performed a more detailed analysis by examining how states' homicide rates are influenced by particular high-crime counties. Although the authors of the Red State Murder Problem provide the state-by-state data used in their study, they do not directly provide the county-level data necessary to answer this question. 24 County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, CHRNR, a program of the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute, however, does provide these comprehensive data. 25 Specifically, CHRNR provides detailed data on healthcare, education, economic, and demographic variables, including homicide rates and overall state populations on a county-by-county basis all across the country. Table 2 provides homicide rate rankings across all 50 states based on homicide data from 2014 to 2020. 26 A closer examination of the local officials in the counties and cities listed above reveals that the vast majority of them are Democrats. Table 2. Homicide rates by state, 2014 to 2020. Rank. State. Homicide rate per 100,000 population. 1. District of Columbia 19.846. 2. Louisiana 13.390. 3. Mississippi 12.303. 4. Alabama 10.728. 5. Missouri 9.363. 6. South Carolina 9.237. 7. Maryland 8.835. 8. New Mexico 8.403. 9. Tennessee 7.783. 10. Illinois 7.746. 11. Arkansas 7.688. 12. Oklahoma 7.411.
Are you fucking getting it yet?
13. Georgia 7.264. 14. Alaska 7.112. 15. Nevada 6.564. 16. Delaware 6.486. 17. North Carolina 6.396.
18. Indiana 6.321. 19. Ohio 6.157. 20. Florida 6.064. 21. Michigan 5.980. 22. Arizona 5.808.
23. Pennsylvania 5.781.
This is not
24.
a test.
Texas
This is your emergency
5.565.
broadcast system announcing the commencement
25.
of the annual
California
purge sanctioned by the U.S.
4.971.
government. Weapons of class 4
26.
and lower
Kentucky
have been authorized for use
4.936.
during the purge. All other weapons
27.
are restricted.
Virginia
Government officials of
4.447.
ranking 10 have been granted
28.
immunity from
Kansas
the purge and shall not be
4.324.
harmed. Commencing at the
29.
siren,
West
any and
Virginia
all crime,
4.202.
including murder, will be legal for
30.
12 continuous
Colorado
hours.
3.943.
Police, fire, and emergency medical
31.
services
New Jersey
will be unavailable until
3.828.
tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when the
32.
purge concludes.
Wisconsin
Blessed be our
3.515.
new founding fathers and America,
33.
a nation
Washington
reborn. May God be with you
3.223.
all.
34. New York 3.206. 35. Connecticut 3.064. 36. Montana 2.869. 37. Oregon 2.758. 38. Hawaii 2.559. 39. South Dakota 2.464. 40. Nebraska 2.323. 41. Wyoming 2.232. 42. Massachusetts 2.190. 43. Utah 2.092. 44. Minnesota 1.962. 45. Iowa 1.928. 46. Rhode Island 1.892. 47. Idaho 1.642. 48. Vermont 1.444. 49. North Dakota 1.437. 50. New Hampshire 1.244. 51. Maine 0.741. In Orleans Parish, Louisiana, which encompasses New Orleans, District Attorney Jason Williams, Mayor LaToya Cantrell, and all 7 members of the City Council are Democrats.
Imagine I had to type
Homicide
all this
rates
out.
recalculated upon removing counties with high homicide rates. In the state of Louisiana, the overall homicide rate is 13.390. If you were to remove Orleans Parish, the recalculated homicide rate would be 11.302, which is a homicide rate reduction of -15.59%. In the state of Mississippi, the overall homicide rate is 12.303. If you were to remove Hinds County, encompassing Jackson, the recalculated homicide rate would be 10.735, which is a homicide rate reduction of -12.75%. In the state of Alabama, the overall homicide rate is 10.728. If you were to remove Jefferson County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 9.001, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 16.10%. Montgomery County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 10.220, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 4.74%. Both Jefferson and Montgomery counties, the recalculated homicide rate would be 8.314, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 22.51%. In the state of Missouri, the overall homicide rate is 9.363. If you were to remove St. Louis City, the recalculated homicide rate would be 7.482, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 20.09%. St. Louis County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 8.395, which is a homicide rate reduction of both St. Louis City and St. Louis County. The recalculated homicide rate would be 6.070, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 10.34%. In the state of South Carolina, the overall homicide rate is 9.237. If you were to remove Richland and Lexington counties, encompassing Columbia, the recalculated homicide rate would be 9.210, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 35.17%. In the state of New Mexico, the overall homicide rate is 8.403. If you were to remove Bernalillo County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 7.511, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 0.29%. In the state of Tennessee, the overall homicide rate is 7.783. If you were to remove Shelby County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 5.327, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 31.56%. Davidson County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 7.299, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 6.22%. Both Shelby and Davidson counties, the recalculated homicide rate would be 4.432, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 43.05%. In the state of Illinois, the overall homicide rate is 7.746. If you were to remove Cook County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 3.476, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 55.12%. In the state of Arkansas, the overall homicide rate is 7.688. If you were to remove Pulaski County, the recalculated homicide rate would be 6.256, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 18.63%. In the state of Georgia, the overall homicide rate is 7.264. If you were to remove Fulton and DeKalb counties, encompassing Atlanta, the recalculated homicide rate would be 6.009, which is a homicide rate reduction of minus 17.28%. In Hinds County, Mississippi, District Attorney Jody E. Owens and all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors are Democrats. In Jackson County, Mississippi, District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath is a Republican, as are 4 of the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, but the City of Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba is a Democrat. In Jefferson County, Alabama, the Board of Commissions consists of 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. 30 District Attorney Danny Carr is a Democrat, as is Birmingham Mayor Randall Woodfin. The Montgomery County, Alabama, Board of Commissions consists of 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. 31 District Attorney Darrell Bailey is a Democrat, as is Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed. The elected officials in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, are all Democrats. The 28 members of the Board of Aldermen are all Democrats, as are Circuit Attorney, the equivalent of a local district attorney, Kim Gardner, and Mayor Tashora Jones. St. Louis County is equally lopsided with elected Democrats, including 5 of the 7 members of the County Council and District Attorney Wesley Bell. The city of Columbia, South Carolina, is unique in that it straddles 2 counties, Richland and Lexington. Richland County Solicitor, the equivalent of the local district attorney, Byron E. Gibson, is a Democrat, as are 9 of the 11 members of the Richland County Council. Lexington County Solicitor Rick Hubbard is a Republican, as are all 9 members of the Lexington County Council. In Bernalillo County, New Mexico, which includes Albuquerque, 4 of the 5 members of the Board of Commissioners are Democrats, as are Mayor Tim Keller and District Attorney Raul Torres. In Shelby County, Tennessee, 9 of the 13 members of the Board of Commissioners are Democrats, as are Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland and Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy. In Davidson County, Tennessee, members of the Metropolitan Nashville Council are all listed as nonpartisan. However, both District Attorney Glenn Funk and Mayor John Cooper are Democrats. 15 of the 17 members of the Cook County, Illinois, which encompasses Chicago, Board of Commissioners are Democrats, as are Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, the first Soros rogue prosecutor, and Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, whom I guess is now lecturing at a law school. What's she teaching? What not to do? 9 of the 14 members of the Pulaski County, Arkansas, Quorum Court, the county government's legislative body, are Democrats, as are Mayor Frank Scott Jr. and Prosecuting Attorney Larry Jegley of Pulaski County, which encompasses Little Rock. In Georgia, all 7 members of the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners are Democrats, as are District Attorney Sherry Boston and Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. DeKalb County encompasses the eastern section of the city of Atlanta. 4 of the 7 members of the Board of Commissioners of Fulton County, Georgia, which encompasses the rest of Atlanta, are Democrats, as is District Attorney Fani Willis. The authors of the Third Way study either intentionally neglected or simply don't understand that the criminal justice system within the 50 states is not a homogeneous nationwide system, but rather an amalgamation of thousands of microcosms consisting of federal, state, county, and local law enforcement agencies and prosecutors and unique approaches to the enforcement of state law. There are, for example, 3,143 counties in this country. Violations of state law are prosecuted largely at the county or city level. Your public safety as a resident is dramatically impacted by your district attorney and whether he or she is a Soros rogue prosecutor or a law and order prosecutor, by your police department, and by whether the local politicians support and adequately fund the police and prosecutors' offices. This is why the Soros rogue prosecutor movement has concentrated its fire at identifying, recruiting, and funding candidates for local district attorney races. By elevating pro-criminal, anti-victim zealots into office, the rogue prosecutor movement destabilizes the safety of the community, treats criminals as victims and the police as the criminals, and ignores real victims. Whether a state as a whole voted for Donald Trump or Joe Biden has nothing whatever to do with the homicide rates within its constituent parts. The authors of the Third Way study are either oblivious to this fact or, as we suspect, aware of this but nonetheless determined to flip the political narrative. As we demonstrate, however, the high murder rate is almost exclusively cabined in cities run by Democrats and with Democrat district attorneys, many of whom are Soros-bought and paid for rogue prosecutors or inspired by Soros, groups like the egregiously misnamed Fair and Just Prosecution, and other battering rams of the movement. As Table 2 illustrates, Washington, D.C., has the nation's highest homicide rate at 19.846 homicides per 100,000 residents, yet is completely neglected in the red state murder problem. Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi are also highly ranked with homicide rates ranging from 13.390 to 10.728 per 100,000 residents. Louisiana's homicide rate is heavily dependent on Orleans Parish, which has a homicide rate of 36.126 homicides per 100,000 residents. Removing this locality drops the state's homicide rate from 13.390 to 11.302, a 15.59% reduction. Alabama's overall homicide rate is also heavily influenced by a few localities. For example, removing Jefferson County drops the state's homicide rate from 10.728 to 9.001, a 16.1% reduction, and removing Montgomery County drops the homicide rate to 10.220, a 4.74% reduction. Dropping both lowers the homicide rate to 8.314, a 22.51% reduction, and would lower the state's ranking in Table 2 from 4th to 8th in the nation. These dramatic drops are illustrated in Chart 1. Missouri's overall homicide rate is marked by similar behavior. St. Louis City and St. Louis County heavily influence the state's homicide rate, having 46.235 and 14.387 homicides per 100,000 residents, respectively. Removing St. Louis City lowers the state's homicide rate from 9.363 to 7.482 per 100,000 residents, a 20.09% reduction. Removing St. Louis County lowers the homicide rate to 8.395 per 100,000 residents, a 10.34% reduction, while dropping both counties reduces the state's homicide rate by 35.17% to 6.070 homicides per 100,000 residents. These reductions are apparent in Chart 2. Looking at Table 2, removing both counties drops Missouri's homicide ranking from 5th to 20th in the nation. New Mexico's homicide rate is heavily dependent on Bernalillo County, encompassing the city of Albuquerque. Bernalillo County is the state's most populous county and has a homicide rate of 10.241 homicides per 100,000 residents. Removing this county lowers the state's homicide rate from 8.403 to 7.511 per 100,000 residents, a 10.62% reduction, and lowers the county's homicide rate from 8th to 11th in the nation. Georgia's homicide rate is heavily influenced by crime in Atlanta, encompassing Fulton and DeKalb counties. Dropping these two counties, which have homicide rates of 13.407 and 13.272 per 100,000 residents, respectively, causes the state's homicide rate to fall from 7.264 to 5.999, a 17.3% reduction, and the state's ranking in Table 2 to fall from 13th to 21st in the nation. Arkansas's homicide rate is impacted by Pulaski County, which has 17.199 homicides per 100,000 residents. Removing this county drops the state's overall homicide rate from 7.688 to 6.256, a 18.63% reduction. Tennessee is heavily influenced by crime in Memphis and Nashville. Removing Shelby County, with a homicide rate of 23.424 per 100,000 residents, surrounding Memphis results in a reduction from 7.783 to 5.327 per 100,000 residents, a 31.56% change. Dropping Davidson County, with a homicide rate of 12.074 per 100,000, surrounding Nashville results in a reduction from 7.783 to 7.299 per 100,000 residents, a 6.22% change. Dropping both counties brings down the state's homicide rate to 4.432 per 100,000 residents, a 43.05% reduction, and lowers the state's national ranking in Table 2 from 9th to 27th. Finally, Cook County, Illinois, is another highly influential county. Home to Chicago, Cook County boasts a homicide rate of 13.99 homicides per 100,000 residents, and dropping it from the state's overall homicide rate calculation lowers the state's rate from 7.746 to 3.476, a 55.1% reduction. See Chart 3. This reduction causes the state's ranking in Table 1 to plummet from 10th to 32nd in the nation. It is apparent that some states' homicide rates are determined heavily by crime in certain counties. It is thus naive and nonsensical to make partisan claims about states' overall crime rates while completely neglecting how various localities contribute to these rates. Policies, not COVID. One of the left's talking points is that the COVID-19 caused or at least contributed to the general rise in crime and that the rise in crime started during the pandemic. There are no reputable studies that prove that crime increased as a direct result of COVID lockdowns, which makes sense. Many people across the country were locked down, including in the inner cities where most crime takes place. What the data do show is that crime, including violent crime, was rising in cities with the toxic trio prior to the onset of the pandemic, and that the death of George Floyd, which happened in May 2020, led to a rise in murders and auto theft in key cities. But numbers themselves do not begin to tell the whole story of why crime rates in these homicide hellholes have risen. Starting in 2016, with the election of the first Soros rogue prosecutor, Kim Foxx, in Chicago, cities with rogue prosecutors have imposed policies that all, each and every one of them, inure to the benefit of criminals, as we have detailed in our scholarship for the past 2 years. Those policies include, but are not limited to, refusing to prosecute entire categories of misdemeanor crimes, including theft, drug possession, shoplifting, receiving stolen property, breaking and entering, destruction of property, disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and more. Forbidding prosecutors from including sentencing enhancements or allegations of prior convictions or special circumstances for egregious crimes or actions. Forbidding prosecutors from seeking the death penalty in any case. Forbidding prosecutors from seeking life without parole sentences for any crime. Refusing to prosecute violent teenagers in adult court for such crimes as murder, child abuse, and rape. Requiring prosecutors to ask for the release of duly convicted violent felons, whose appeals have been denied, after these felons have served at least 15 years of a longer sentence. Prohibiting or limiting prosecutors from asking for bail to ensure the presence of the defendant at the next court hearing and or taking into consideration the defendant's prior criminal record. Conclusion. The foregoing policies and dozens of other pro-criminal, anti-victim policies have contributed to the lawlessness across blue cities and the steep rise in crime rates. To suggest now that Republican elected officials who have followed different policies have contributed to crime increases is at best laughable.
So basically we've established the loony left are cowards because no one came over. And I've invited them, and probably not in the best way, but guess what? If you're a fucking idiot, you don't deserve to be talked to politely. They help the sex traffickers and pedophiles with their grooming, and that there's really, I'm beginning to think at this point, because there's a difference between Democrats, like RFK Jr. is a classic Democrat. He's not a loony leftist. He's a classic Democrat, just like his brother, his uncle, and his father. A classic Democrat. The loony left groom children, let criminals go, and do all the shit that I've detailed tonight. So till next week, maybe one of them will have the guts. Probably not. I'm a pretty smart guy. I know I'm fucking smarter than they are. Will come over and entertain us, but I doubt it. But anyway, until next week. Boa noite. That's your part. You hate Trump, Biden, shot. Tell him you see you are good. Science make man. That means make land. Right now, God is all you say. Allergy is just much. The doctor's cut off your nuts. And you think that you obey. Call me and swear with me, cause you the way you be. And I don't wanna let go of your fantasy. I know I'm right. You're fucking crazy. And tonight on the road, just have much. You ain't right. You're calculated. I know I'm right. You're fucking nuts.
Fuck all past and deer stand.